And tonight on the Daily Wrap, safe haven cities like San Francisco under attack for protecting illegal immigrant criminals. More companies dropped Donald Trump following his controversial comments about Mexicans, but his star continues to rise in his quest to be president. Republicans rebelling against the Supreme Court's ruling to legalize same-sex marriage. And Bill Cosby has information released that he fought hard to hide. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host, Rick Unger.
What's going on, brother?
How are you, sir?
I'm good today. And you?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. Living the dream. The political dream.
And speaking of the dream, a dream finally comes true to have somebody on that has my name, at least first name anyway.
Yes, that's all of our dream. We've lived for this moment.
Making his first appearance in the Daily Wrap, stand-up comedian and writer Joe DeVito. Welcome,
Thanks for
sir.
having me.
And finally, Newsmax TV contributor and writer for National Review Online, John Funn, joins us as well. Welcome, John. Well, everybody, let's get right to the Daily Download. And President Obama's immigration policy is under fire tonight. Francisco Sanchez, an illegal immigrant who had already been deported 5 times, is accused of shooting a young San Francisco woman as she walked along a water park there last week.
You have to realize that every day is precious, and no matter where you're at, what you're doing, just cherish the people in your life and who you love, and tell them you love them. Because I'll never get to tell my sister that I love her again.
Now, in the wake of the killing, the city of San Francisco is under sharp criticism over its status as a so-called sanctuary city, a local law that prohibits city employees from helping federal authorities with immigration investigations or arrest unless required by law or warrant. But San Fran sheriff is defending the law and says federal authorities are to blame for not going after the suspect.
You would have thought that he had met the threshold where they would have obtained a court order or a warrant to facilitate their interest in deporting him or incarcerating him, whatever their interest was, the next time. And they did not do that.
Okay, Rick, fair to say the president's immigration policies and sanctuary laws are to blame for this happening?
Well, this predates the president by quite a few years. Where I think the sheriff of San Francisco is being a tiny bit disingenuous is that the ICE did give them a request saying that if you do release this prisoner, please notify us first. They didn't do that. And San Francisco's taking the point of view, since they had no cause to hold him, they had no obligation to follow through on that request. You know what? The problem with sanctuary cities is they can actually do what they're doing legally. San Francisco's law is considered legal, but there's a level of cooperation that everybody would benefit from pursuing. And in this case, I think San Francisco is going to take the blame, and I think they should, because it wouldn't have killed them to make that phone call before they release.
Do you think
them.
if somebody gets deported and they come back in and they're caught, that should be it, and they should just be arrested and go to jail?
But,
I mean, this is 5 times.
Yeah, I don't know if it matters because, as you say, this guy was deported 5 times and he made his way back. You got to catch him. But yeah, I would agree with you that if you catch him, it should be instant. Do not
one and done.
Collect 200. Do not pass go. You're going back, brother. Unless you did something wrong that we want to prosecute you for.
Joe, your opening analysis.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know what they're waiting for, a 6 strikes and you're out policy here. I mean, clearly this was a very bad guy. And he didn't end up in San Francisco by accident. He went there because he knew he could continue a life of criminality. So he's not someone who's coming to America to better himself or to work hard. He's coming there because he knows he can get away with living a life where he exploits and harms other people. This idea of sanctuary cities, like he's the hunchback of Notre Dame going for sanctuary. It shows you, like, I'm surprised this hasn't happened more frequently.
Yeah, John?
But it's important to note that it hasn't happened more frequently.
Well, we don't know that. There are a lot of these cases that frankly are never covered in the media. This, I think, the juxtaposition of this with Trump was just too obvious not to ignore. I think San Francisco is going to become one of our first cities, along with Los Angeles, which I call America's new Rio. It has the highest number of rich people you can possibly imagine, Silicon Valley billionaires, and it has a homeless population and an indigent population, which is truly tragic. And unfortunately, this fellow blended right into that. San Francisco has managed to socially stratify people. So it basically, I think, patronizes and infantilizes people at the bottom, and will do almost anything to attract rich people in their high rises. And I love San Francisco. I grew up there. And what's happened to the city, where these two things can coexist, is a warning to the rest of America.
I do want to say something about that, because, as you know, I lived in Santa Monica for 30-some years, and we did have the huge homeless population you're talking about. There's a reason for that. Homeless people are not stupid. Yeah. If you're going to be homeless, do you want to be homeless on the beach in Southern California or San Francisco, or do you want to be homeless in the dead of winter in Minneapolis? The thing is now, once they're there, you have to make a decision. Are you going to learn to live together, or are you going to be in a constant battle over it? I think most of these cities have found it works better if you learn together.
I used to work in welfare programs as a young man. I was a welfare bureaucrat, actually. So I worked with a lot of these people. 2/3 of them have serious mental health, drug, or alcohol problems.
That's true.
And they need treatment, or in some cases, confinement. By just letting them roam free, and especially some of them turn to criminal behavior, doesn't help them, doesn't help the community, and it certainly doesn't help these poor victims.
Does this exonerate Donald Trump in any capacity because of the timing of his comments and then what's happening right afterwards? I know it's a far bridge to jump, but
like a lot of demagogues, Donald Trump put his finger on a real issue and then proceeded to mangle it mercilessly. The latest one is, when in his retreat from his previous remarks, he said, well, the Mexican government is forcing these criminals on us.
Yeah.
Well, believe me, I'm a reporter. I want to know this.
Yeah.
I want the documents, and I want the evidence that the Mexican government is actually sending us murderers and molesters, all of that. So the answer is, Donald Trump had stumbled into an issue that's a real problem. Not sending these criminals back, not confining them. But he is actually hurting his cause because of the populist demagogic way he's going about it.
Well, let me play contrarian. Could he have meant that the Mexican government is not doing enough to secure their own border from people coming over?
John's right, because he said it a few times now. He had a chance to back off of the wording.
He doesn't back off, though.
No, he's gone even further. He actually is claiming, that without any question, that the Mexican government is picking and choosing who they're sending across the border. As you know, I also lived in Mexico. I lived in a lot of places. And nobody I knew in Mexico was ever picked by the government to go across the border. But I'll tell you what, we need to stop the Donald Trump conversation, even though I know that we won't, because as of this morning, it's all over. We found out that he has got illegal Mexicans working at the hotel he is building in Washington, D.C. Donald, you get busted on the hypocrite thing, and by the way, this is probably the most unsurprising story of the year. You don't get to keep talking about this. If you can't do it in your own building, how are you going to do it for the whole country?
Are you surprised that Josh Earnest said Republicans are the blame? That he said the GOP blocked efforts to secure the border? I mean, can we just not play politics for 2 minutes in this country?
Well, what Trump was saying there, it's not like when Castro emptied the prisons and sent over all his criminals during the Mariel boat lift. It's completely different from that. Although I think not enough times do we say, what's going on in Mexico that you have all these vast majority of really hardworking people fleeing their country?
Drug cartels are taking over.
Yeah, I mean, the country's, it's a failed state.
There's no work. They can make more money here and send a big chunk of it back home. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way they protect their southern border, they're not messing around.
You bet.
So I don't understand why Mexico being a failed state becomes our problem.
So I want to get your take, since we have you here for the first time, on the rise of Trump. And does it sustain?
No.
How does it go away?
He's a guy who burns out. At this point, I think all he could do is, after he makes one of his points, if he just let out a loud belch, I think that would be if there's a way to get more Donald Trumpiness.
You know, the danger is he's going to be your competitor on the stand-up comedy stage. He could do a good career on that.
He's brutal. I mean, I think it's good that he's bringing up some things for us to talk about, but there's no way he's going to burn it out. He's just too obnoxious.
I like the loud belch. I'm going to have to use that.
I think that's what. Great. And also, his shirts made in China are very unattractive. The Trump brand.
Well, you can't buy them in Macy's anymore.
Okay. I just can't wait for the concession speech and what that sounds like. That'll be remarkable. Anyway, we want to hear from you. What do you think about the president's immigration policies? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let your voice be heard. Be back with more in a moment.